Clara stood alone in the sprawling cemetery, the muted colors of autumn painting the landscape with shades of gold and crimson. The air was crisp and filled with the faint scent of earth and damp leaves, a stark contrast to the heaviness that weighed on her heart. She clutched a faded photograph of her daughter, Sarah, its edges worn from time and repeated handling. The image captured Sarah's radiant smile, a snapshot of joy that felt like a lifetime ago, before the illness had cast its long shadow over their lives. As she approached the grave, Clara felt the familiar ache of loss tighten around her chest. The headstone, adorned with fresh flowers, lilies and daisies, Sarah's favorites, stood as a solemn sentinel over her daughter's eternal rest. Kneeling down, Clara placed the photograph gently beside the flowers, her fingertips brushing against the cool, smooth stone. "I miss you so much, sweetheart," as she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "Every day feels like a struggle without you." Suddenly, a soft sound broke through her reverie. Clara turned her head slightly, her gaze falling on a woman sitting a few feet away. The stranger was hunched over, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, the deep sorrow radiating from her like an unseen force. Clara's heart twisted at the sight. She recognized that pain all too well. It was a universal language, one that spoke of loss, heartache, and an emptiness that could never truly be filled. For a moment, Clara hesitated. She was engulfed in her own grief, yet something about the woman's anguish called to her. She rose slowly, as if moving through water, and took a few tentative steps toward the stranger. "Are you okay?" Clara asked, her voice soft but steady, as she drew closer. The woman looked up, and Clara was taken aback by the intensity of her gaze. Tears streamed down the stranger's cheeks, glimmering like tiny jewels in the late afternoon light. She appeared to be in her late 30s, with long dark hair that framed her face in wild, untamed waves. Clara could see the lines of sorrow etched deep into her features, lines that seemed to tell their own story of loss and longing. "I'm so sorry," the woman stammered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I didn't mean to disturb you." Her voice trembled, yet Clara could hear the depth of emotion behind it, the raw vulnerability that hung in the air. Clara shook her head, her own heart aching in sympathy. "You're not disturbing me. I understand. I just came to visit my daughter." She gestured toward Sarah's grave, her throat tightening as she spoke. "I lost her a year ago." The woman's eyes widened, and for a moment, her expression shifted from despair to something akin to recognition. "I'm so sorry for your loss," as she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm Evelyn. I come here often." "Clara," as she replied, feeling an inexplicable connection forming between them. Why do you come here?" Evelyn hesitated, her gaze flickering back to the ground as if searching for words among the fallen leaves. "I lost someone too," as she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's hard to explain. But I feel like I need to be here." Clara felt a pang of curiosity. Who did you lose?" She asked gently, sensing that there was more to Evelyn's story than the woman was letting on. Evelyn swallowed hard, tears still glistening in her eyes. My brother," as she said, her voice breaking. He passed away a few months ago. It feels like a part of me is gone forever." The pain in her voice resonated with Clara, echoing her own heartache. I can't imagine what you're going through," Clara said, kneeling down next to Evelyn. I thought I'd never recover from losing Sarah, and yet, here I am." She let out a bitter laugh, one that held no humor. I didn't think I'd ever find a way to live again." Evelyn met Clara's gaze, her expression shifting from despair to a glimmer of understanding. "It's like a dark cloud that follows you everywhere, isn't it? You never really escape it." Clara nodded, her heart aching with empathy. Exactly. Some days are better, but others, it feels like I'm drowning." They sat in silence for a moment, both women enveloped in their own sorrow yet finding a strange comfort in each other's presence. The wind rustled the leaves above them, and Clara felt a sense of calm wash over her, a fleeting moment of connection that made the world feel a little less heavy. "Do you come here often?" Clara asked, breaking the silence as she took a deep breath, the crisp air filling her lungs. Every week," Evelyn replied, her voice steady once more. I talk to him, you know? I feel closer to him here, even if it's just for a moment." Clara understood that feeling all too well. I do the same with Sarah. Sometimes, I swear I can feel her beside me, especially when I'm here." A wave of emotion washed over her, and she blinked back tears. It's as if the memories are more vivid in this place." Evelyn nodded, her expression thoughtful. Maybe that's why we're drawn here. This place holds the echoes of our loved ones, their laughter, their warmth. Yes, Clara murmured, her heart swelling with a mixture of grief and gratitude. It's a bittersweet comfort. Evelyn glanced at the headstone before returning her gaze to Clara. Do you mind if I ask how your daughter passed? There was a gentleness in her tone, a tenderness that made Clara feel safe enough to share. Clara hesitated, the weight of the question pressing down on her. It was complicated, as she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. She was sick for a long time. We fought so hard, but in the end, her voice trailed off as the memories flooded in, a torrent of pain and loss that threatened to engulf her once more. I'm so sorry, Evelyn said softly, reaching out to place a comforting hand on Clara's arm. The warmth of her touch was unexpected yet welcome. It must have been incredibly difficult. It was, Clara admitted, her voice thick with emotion. But I keep thinking about how brave she was. She fought until the very end. Evelyn looked at her with an intensity that made Clara's heart race. You should be proud of her, as she said. It takes immense strength to face such darkness. Clara smiled faintly, grateful for the kind words. In that moment, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe she wasn't alone in her grief after all. Maybe there were others out there who understood the depths of her sorrow. As they sat together, a profound silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the distant chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves. Clara felt an undeniable bond forming, a connection forged in shared loss and understanding. Would you like to join me for coffee sometime? Clara asked suddenly, surprising herself with the invitation. I'd love to hear more about your brother and your journey. Evelyn's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, Clara feared she had overstepped. But then a soft smile broke through the clouds of grief that hung over Evelyn's face. I'd like that, as she replied, her voice warm. I really would. As Clara rose to leave, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. Perhaps this was the beginning of something new, a chance to not just grieve but to connect with someone who truly understood. As she walked away from the grave, she cast one last glance over her shoulder, her heart full of hope and curiosity about the woman who would soon become a part of her life. Little did she know, the path ahead was fraught with secrets yet to be uncovered, mysteries that would entwine their lives in unimaginable ways. Clara took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she approached Evelyn. The woman's tear-streaked face was a mirror of raw emotion, and for a fleeting moment, Clara felt as if she were staring into a reflection of her own despair. The air was thick with silence, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, carrying with it the scent of freshly turned earth. Are you erledigt? Clara's voice was soft, almost a whisper, as she bridged the distance between them. She could see the anguish etched into every line of Evelyn's face, a sorrow that resonated deeply within her. Evelyn looked up, her hazel eyes glistening with unshed tears. No, as she replied, her voice cracking. I'm not all right. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, leaving streaks of dampness on her skin. I shouldn't be here. Not now. Not ever. Sometimes we need to be where we lost them, Clara said, surprising herself with the insight. She knelt beside Evelyn, the ground cool beneath her knees. I'd come here to feel closer to my daughter. Evelyn's gaze drifted to the gravestone before them, the name of Sarah engraved in polished stone. A shiver ran through her. Sarah, as she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been visiting her grave for weeks now. Clara's heart raced as she processed this information. You? What do you mean you've been visiting? Why? The question tumbled from her lips, a mixture of curiosity and concern. I lost someone too, Evelyn replied, her voice trembling. A daughter? Her name was Lily. There was a weight in her words, a heaviness that hung in the air between them. I didn't get to say goodbye. Clara's breath caught in her throat. I'm so sorry, as she said, her heart aching for the woman beside her. How did you lose her? Evelyn paused, her expression clouded by the memories. It was an accident. A freak accident, really. She was only 12. Tears spilled down her cheeks again, and she pressed her fingers against her lips, stifling a sob. I didn't think I would ever find a place to grieve. Until I found her here. Clara felt a connection, a thread weaving through their shared pain. What was she like? As she asked gently, wanting to keep the conversation alive, to share in this moment of vulnerability. Evelyn took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. As she was full of life, always laughing. She loved to dance, to draw. Her smile could light up a room. Her voice quivered as she spoke, and Clara could sense the warmth of those memories mixed with the chill of loss. And now, all I have left are memories. I come here to remember her, to feel her presence. Yeah, I understand, Clara said, her heart swelling with empathy. Yeah, I feel Sarah everywhere I go, but it's never enough. I just want to hold her again, to hear her voice. Evelyn turned to Clara, her eyes shimmering with understanding. It never is enough, is it? This grief, it's like a shadow that follows you, no matter how far you run. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared sorrow enveloping them. Clara felt a strange sense of comfort in Evelyn's presence, as if they were two souls adrift in a world that had forgotten their pain. Why do you come here if you didn't know her? Clara finally asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. What drew you to Sarah's grave? Evelyn hesitated, her brows knitting together. I don't know, as she confessed, her voice barely audible. It's something about her, it just felt right. I felt drawn to her story, as if she was calling out to me. Clara's heart raced at Evelyn's words. What do you mean? Did you know her? The question hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. No, not in the way you think, Evelyn replied, shaking her head. But I've seen her name in the local papers, heard whispers about her illness. It was like a ghost haunting me. I had to come and pay my respects. It's complicated. Complicated how? Clara pressed, her instincts on high alert. You're a stranger, yet you're here every week. You can't just feel connected to someone you never met. I know how it sounds. Evelyn's voice trembled with emotion. But I swear it feels like I've been searching for something, someone, and when I found her grave, it was like a missing piece of my heart clicked into place. Clara's mind raced. There was something unsettling about Evelyn's words, something that stirred an instinctual wariness within her. Missing piece? What do you mean by that? Evelyn's eyes bore into Clara's, and for a moment, it felt as if they were sharing an unspoken understanding. I lost my daughter, Clara, and in losing her, I lost a part of myself. But here, with Sarah's memory, I feel alive again, if only for a moment. Clara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Evelyn's confession settle over her like a heavy cloak. But why Sarah? As she asked, her voice laced with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. What is it about her that resonates with you so deeply? I don't know, Evelyn whispered, her gaze drifting back to the grave. Maybe it's the way you talk about her, the love that spills from every word. It reminds me of my Lily. I see the life you had together, and it fills me with both joy and sorrow. Clara felt a rush of emotions, anger, grief, and an inexplicable bond forming between them. You're saying you feel connected to her because of your own loss? Because of your daughter? Yes, Evelyn said, her voice a mere breath. But it's more than that. I've been searching for some kind of solace, and I found myself drawn here, as if Sarah's spirit is guiding me. The words hung in the air, and Clara felt the weight of them settle in her chest. Are you saying you're here to find closure for your own loss? Through my daughter? Evelyn nodded slowly, the tears flowing freely now. I know it sounds strange, but I needed to find a way to heal. I thought maybe being here would help me understand. Help me let go. Clara's heart raced, her mind reeling. A healing can't come from visiting someone else's grave, as she said, her voice rising in disbelief. You need to confront your own pain, not project it onto my daughter. I'm not trying to take anything from you, Evelyn pleaded, desperation creeping into her tone. I don't know why I'm here. I just felt compelled to come. It was a pull, an instinct I couldn't shake. Clara's brow furrowed as she struggled to reconcile the emotions swirling within her. You can't just show up and claim a connection without a reason, as she said, her voice quavering between anger and sorrow. I didn't ask for this. Evelyn snapped back, her own grief bubbling to the surface. I didn't choose to lose my daughter, and I certainly didn't choose to feel connected to yours. It just happened. Clara felt a pang of guilt wash over her, realizing that Evelyn's pain mirrored her own. I'm sorry, as she said softly, her voice breaking. I didn't mean to lash out. It's hard to understand. Evelyn took a deep breath, her eyes brimming with tears. I understand, as she said, her voice gentler now. A grief can make us act in ways we don't understand. I never imagined I'd find myself here, pouring my heart out to a stranger. Clara looked at the grave, at the flowers she had placed there only moments ago. And neither did I, as she confessed. But perhaps in our own way, we're both searching for something. Evelyn nodded, her shoulders trembling. Maybe we can find it together. If you'd allow me to share in your grief, Clara, I promise I won't intrude. I just want to remember them. Clara hesitated, her heart torn between the desire for connection and the fear of the unknown. Yet, as she looked into Evelyn's eyes, she saw a reflection of her own pain, a mirror of the sorrow that had consumed her for too long. All right, Clara finally whispered, her voice barely audible. I'll let you in. As the two women sat side by side, united in their grief, a fragile bond began to form. A bond forged in sorrow, hope, and an unbreakable thread of loss that intertwined their lives in ways neither could yet fathom. Clara stood at the bustling cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. She glanced at the clock on the wall, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. It was the first time she had invited Evelyn to join her outside the cemetery, a gesture that felt both comforting and daunting. Clara had spent the past week wrestling with the strange connection she felt towards this woman who had been mourning at her daughter's grave. As she settled into a corner table, Clara's mind wandered back to the earlier conversations they had shared, each revealing layers of grief and longing. When Clara had first approached Evelyn, she sensed an invisible thread binding their sorrows together, a shared understanding of loss that transcended their circumstances. Now, as she waited, Clara wondered how deep the ties truly ran. The bell above the cafe door jingled, pulling Clara from her thoughts. She looked up to see Evelyn entering, her eyes slightly puffy from tears but a flicker of hope shining through. Clara smiled and waved, gesturing for Evelyn to join her at the table. Hi Clara, Evelyn said softly as she slid into the chair across from her. Thank you for inviting me. I really needed this. I'm glad you came, Clara replied, her voice warm but edged with nervousness. I thought, maybe we could talk more about our daughters. It might help us both. Evelyn nodded, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the tablecloth. I'd like that. It feels comforting to share, even if it's painful. Clara took a deep breath, the weight of her own grief pressing down as she prepared to open up about Sarah. It's been so hard since she passed. I feel like there are so many questions I never got to ask her. So many things left unsaid. Evelyn leaned in, her expression earnest. What happened to Sarah? If you're comfortable sharing, of course. Clara hesitated, her memories flooding back like a tidal wave. As she was in and out of the hospital for months. It was a rare illness, something I still don't fully understand. It was like watching her fade away, little by little. I kept hoping for a miracle. Her voice cracked, and she quickly wiped away a tear. I can't imagine the helplessness, Evelyn murmured, her voice filled with empathy. It must have been unbearable. Clara nodded, swallowing hard. It was. I remember the day I got the call from the doctor. I thought it was just another routine update, but he told me there was nothing more they could do. I still hear his words echoing in my mind. It felt like my world collapsed in an instant. Evelyn reached across the table, her hand gently covering Clara's. I'm so sorry, Clara. I truly am. It's a pain that never goes away, is it? No, Clara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. It's like carrying a heavy stone in my chest. Some days I can barely breathe. A moment of silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of clinking cups and chatter from other patrons. Evelyn's eyes glistened as she looked down, seemingly wrestling with her own feelings. I lost someone too. Not in the same way, but I understand loss. It leaves a mark on your soul, doesn't it? What happened? Clara asked gently, sensing the weight of Evelyn's sorrow. Evelyn hesitated, her brow furrowing as if searching for the right words. My sister, she was everything to me. We were inseparable. Then one day, she was gone. An accident. Just like that. And I never got to say goodbye. Clara felt a pang of sympathy that resonated deeply within her own experience. I'm so sorry, Evelyn. It's so unfair. Evelyn looked up, their eyes locking in a moment of raw understanding. It is. And sometimes, I can't help but feel that there were things left unsaid, things I wish I could have changed. I've spent so much time wishing I could go back and do things differently. Clara nodded, her heart aching. That's exactly how I feel about Sarah. I think about all the times I could have been there for her, all the moments I took for granted. It's a constant battle with regret. Evelyn's expression shifted, as if a realization had dawned upon her. What if you could find some of those answers? About Sarah, I mean. Would you want to? Clara frowned, the question unsettling her. What do you mean? Answers about her? How could I possibly find those? I don't know, Evelyn said, her voice low but urgent. But sometimes, I think there are pieces of their lives that we don't know, things they kept hidden from us. It's like they have their own stories that we never got to be a part of. Clara's heart raced, uncertainty flooding her thoughts. You think there's something I don't know about Sarah? Something I missed? Evelyn hesitated again, her gaze drifting to the window, as if she was searching for the right words in the outside world. I've been coming to the cemetery for a while now, not just because I empathize with your pain, but because I have my own connection to Sarah. I don't think you realize how intertwined our lives are. Clara's stomach twisted at the implication of Evelyn's words. What do you mean? How are our lives intertwined? Evelyn took a deep breath, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I worked at the hospital where she was treated. I was there, Clara. I saw her struggle. I wish I could have done more. Clara's heart raced, confusion and curiosity battling within her. You were there? But how did you? I was a nurse, Evelyn explained, her voice trembling with emotion. I was one of the last people to see her. And I've carried that memory with me, the guilt of not being able to save her. Clara's mind whirled, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place but still leaving a haunting void. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why do you visit her grave? Evelyn's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she whispered, because I wanted to understand. I wanted to mourn with you, to carry a part of her with me. It felt like the only way to honor her memory. Clara felt a rush of conflicting emotions, anger, sorrow, and an unforeseen connection. Evelyn, this is all so overwhelming. I don't know if I can process everything you've just said. I understand, Evelyn said gently, her voice barely audible. But I believe there's more to discover. Maybe together, we can find the answers we both seek. Clara took a moment to absorb Evelyn's words, her heart racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. Could they truly uncover the secrets that lingered in the shadows of their shared grief? Would it bring them both comfort or further anguish? I don't know where this will lead us, Clara finally said, her voice steadying. But I'm willing to try. For Sarah. Evelyn smiled through her tears, the weight of their shared understanding creating an invisible bond between them. For Sarah, as she echoed, a spark of hope igniting in the depths of her grief. As they sat together, sipping their coffee, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a journey that would not only redefine her understanding of her daughter's life, but also unearth the buried connections they had both been yearning to discover. Clara sat across from Evelyn in the dimly lit coffee shop, the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. Their conversation flowed with an ease that Clara had not anticipated, a balm for the wounds they both carried. She observed the way Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she cradled her cup, the porcelain seeming fragile in her grasp. It was a subtle reminder of their shared vulnerability, two women bound by grief yet still strangers in many ways. I can't shake the feeling that there's more to Sarah's story, Clara confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. She played with the edge of the tablecloth, her thoughts racing. I've spent so much time wondering if I could have done something differently. If I had just, Clara, Evelyn interjected gently, her gaze steady and reassuring. You did everything you could. I can see that in the way you talk about her. A mother's love is immeasurable, and it's not fair to carry the weight of guilt for circumstances beyond your control. Clara looked up, meeting Evelyn's eyes, and felt a flicker of understanding pass between them. Thank you, as she murmured, gratitude swelling in her chest. It's just, every visit here, I feel her absence more acutely. It's like I'm chasing shadows, trying to piece together who she was outside of my memories. Evelyn nodded, her expression shifting as if she were grappling with her own thoughts. I understand that longing. It's why I come here, too. To remember. Silence enveloped them for a moment, filled with the unspoken weight of their shared experiences. Clara's mind drifted back to the hospital, to the sterile scent of antiseptic and the incessant beeping of heart monitors that had filled her days during Sarah's illness. She remembered the faces of the nurses, the doctors, and the infinite questions that had circled her mind like vultures. Did you work at the hospital where Sarah was treated? Clara asked, her curiosity piqued as she leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. Evelyn's gaze faltered for a brief second, and Clara caught a flicker of something, fear or perhaps regret. Yes, as she replied slowly, her voice tinged with a sadness that resonated deeply. I was a nurse there. In the pediatric ward mainly. Clara's heart raced, a chilling realization dawning on her. You were there? You must have seen her. You must know. I did see her, Clara, Evelyn interrupted softly. She was a beautiful girl. So full of life, even in her illness. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. Clara felt a mixture of warmth and coldness wash over her. Warmth from the connection they were building, and coldness from the implications of Evelyn's presence in Sarah's life. What was it like? As she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of anticipation and dread. What do you remember about her time there? Evelyn took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was heartbreaking to see such a young spirit fighting so hard. She had this light about her, a resilience that inspired everyone around her. But, as she paused, her expression darkening, there were things I wish I could change. What do you mean? Clara pressed, her heart pounding. What things? Evelyn looked away, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. The hospital had its share of ethical dilemmas. Sometimes, the pressure to meet certain standards overshadowed the care we provided. I often found myself questioning decisions that were made, especially when it came to patients like Sarah. Clara felt a knot tightening in her stomach. What kind of decisions? Evelyn hesitated, her expression a mix of anguish and determination. I can't go into details, but there were moments when protocols were prioritized over patient needs. I fought against it, but sometimes it felt like I was screaming into the void. Sarah deserved better. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Are you saying that something went wrong? That she didn't get the care she needed? Evelyn's eyes were filled with a deep sorrow as she nodded slowly. I want to say that it wasn't anyone's fault, that it was just the way things unfolded. But I know that's not enough. You need to understand that the system can fail, even when the people within it care deeply. Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she grappled with the implications of Evelyn's words. I spent so long thinking it was just fate, that it was out of my hands. But now, her voice cracked. Now I'm not so sure. I'm so sorry, Evelyn said, reaching across the table to grasp Clara's hand. I didn't come here to hurt you. I only wanted to share what I knew, to help if I could. Clara pulled her hand back, overwhelmed by the weight of the revelations. Help? How can you help me? You're telling me that my daughter may have suffered because of something that happened in that hospital. Why didn't I know about this sooner? Evelyn's expression turned grave. I didn't know how to tell you. I've been visiting her grave because I needed to find a way to say I'm sorry. I thought that perhaps you could find solace in understanding the circumstances surrounding her treatment. Silence enveloped them again, this time heavier than before. Clara felt as if the ground beneath her was shifting, the world she thought she understood crumbling around her. You should have told me this, as she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. You should have come to me sooner. I know, Evelyn said, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I was afraid. Afraid of what you would think of me. I didn't want to intrude on your grief, especially when I know how deep it runs. But the truth is, I've carried this burden for so long. It's been a weight on my heart too. Clara's mind raced, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, confusion, and sorrow. What am I supposed to do with this information? She asked, her voice trembling. What do I do with the possibility that the very people who were supposed to care for her failed her? Evelyn's gaze was filled with understanding, yet it also bore the weight of her own grief. I can't change the past, Clara. But if you want, I can help you dig deeper. There are records, and I might be able to access information that could shed light on what really happened during her treatment. Clara's heart raced at the thought. It was what she had been searching for. Answers, closure, a chance to understand the full story of her daughter's life and death. But as the light of hope flickered within her, it was quickly shadowed by fear. But what if the truth is too painful? What if it's something I can't bear? Evelyn's eyes softened. I can't tell you what to do. All I can offer is my support. But I truly believe that understanding can bring healing, even if it's hard to face. Clara took a deep breath, weighing the implications of Evelyn's offer. The prospect of uncovering hidden truths filled her with both dread and a strange sense of anticipation. I need time to think. This is all a lot. Of course, Evelyn replied, her voice gentle and understanding. I'm here for you, no matter what you decide. As Clara stared into her coffee cup, the The swirling liquid mirrored the tumult of emotions within her. The room around them faded into the background, leaving only the weight of their conversation lingering in the air. Clara's mind raced with possibilities, the truths that lay hidden, the answers that might bring her peace, and the painful reality of what those answers could entail. In that moment, she realized that the journey ahead would not be easy, but it was one she felt compelled to take. The connection between her and Evelyn had grown deeper than she had ever anticipated, and as the shadows of the past loomed ever closer, Clara knew that the quest for truth would ultimately shape the way she understood her daughter, and herself. Clara stood in the dim light of the cafe, her heart racing as she faced Evelyn across the small table. The air was thick with unresolved tension, and the aroma of brewing coffee did little to calm her nerves. Clara's hands trembled slightly as she clutched a steaming cup, its warmth a stark contrast to the chill of uncertainty that enveloped her. Why were you visiting Sarah's grave? Clara's voice was steady but laced with an underlying urgency. She could no longer ignore the gnawing questions that had plagued her since their first encounter. You've been doing it for weeks. What is it that you're not telling me? Evelyn's gaze dropped to the table, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. I didn't mean to intrude. I felt drawn to her, as she murmured, her voice trembling as if the words were heavy stones lodged in her throat. I thought I could pay my respects, that maybe it could bring me some peace. Peace? You're telling me you've been visiting the grave of a girl you didn't know? Clara pressed, her heart racing. You're lying. There's something deeper here, isn't there? Evelyn's face tightened, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You don't understand, as she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was there, at the hospital, when she passed. The admission hung in the air like a thundercloud, charged and heavy. Clara's breath caught in her throat. What do you mean? You were there? You knew her? She leaned forward, her heart pounding. What happened? Evelyn's expression shifted, the anguish in her gaze deepening. I was one of the nurses who cared for her. I tried to help, but there was a mistake. A medical error that should never have happened. She paused, swallowing hard as if the truth were a bitter pill lodged in her chest. It haunts me every day. Clara felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her. A mistake? She echoed, her voice cracking. What kind of mistake? Evelyn's hands trembled as she gripped her coffee cup. There was a mix-up with her medication. I was new, and I didn't double-check. I thought she was stable, but her voice trailed off, the weight of the confession crashing down like a tidal wave. Clara's mind spun as she processed the revelation. The threads of her grief began to intertwine with a narrative she had never considered. You mean to say that my daughter's death was due to negligence? Why didn't you come forward? Why didn't you tell me? Anger flared within her, hot and uncontrollable. I was scared, Evelyn admitted, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't know how to face you. I thought it would be better to stay away, to let you grieve without the burden of my presence. But then I began visiting her grave, and I realized I couldn't hide from this any longer. Clara's heart ached as she saw the torment etched on Evelyn's face. You don't get to decide what's better for me. You've held this secret, and now you're telling me this. Her voice trembled with emotion. How can I trust you? Evelyn looked up, her eyes filled with desperation. I didn't come here to hurt you. I came because I wanted to atone for what happened. I've been living with this guilt, and I thought, maybe if I could just talk to you, it might help us both find some closure. Clara's mind raced, her thoughts colliding like storm clouds. Closure? How can there be closure when? As she cut herself off, her voice wavering. When my daughter's life was taken because of someone's error? Evelyn nodded, her expression a mixture of anguish and regret. I know. I wish I could go back and change it. I wish I could have done something differently. She reached out, her hand trembling as it hovered above the table. Clara, please. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I need you to understand that I never wanted this to happen. The weight of Evelyn's plea settled heavily in the air, forcing Clara to confront a reality she had never anticipated. What do you want from me? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I want you to know the truth, Evelyn replied, her gaze unwavering. About Sarah. About how beautiful she was. About how much she fought. I want you to know that she wasn't alone. I was there for her, even if it was just for a fleeting moment. Clara closed her eyes, the memories of Sarah flooding her mind like a relentless tide. She could almost hear her daughter's laughter, could almost see her bright smile. You don't understand, as she said, her voice breaking. You don't know the pain I've lived with. The emptiness. The questions that haunt me every day. Yeah, I do understand, Evelyn insisted, her voice fierce with conviction. Yeah, I know what it's like to feel powerless, to wish for a second chance. I wish I could have been there for her in a way that mattered. The sincerity in Evelyn's voice pierced through Clara's defenses, forcing her to confront the complex emotions swirling within her. Just then, Clara's eyes caught a glimpse of something peeking out from the top of Evelyn's bag, a glint of silver that sent a chill down her spine. With a sudden, almost instinctual motion, she reached across the table and pulled the bag closer. Before she could stop herself, she rummaged through the contents, her heart racing with a mix of hope and dread. What are you doing?" Evelyn exclaimed, her voice laced with panic. Clara's fingers brushed against a small familiar object, a hospital bracelet, worn and faded, with Sarah's name embossed upon it. She pulled it out, holding it up for Evelyn to see. Where did you get this?" Clara's voice was low and dangerous, each word dripping with accusation. Evelyn's face turned pale, the color draining from her cheeks. I found it in the hospital room. I didn't think it would mean anything to anyone." Her words faltered, and Clara could see the fear in her eyes. This belonged to my daughter." Clara's voice shook with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You've been carrying this all along?" I didn't know," Evelyn whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know it would become so important. I thought it was just a reminder of a life lost, of my own failure." Your failure?" Clara's voice rose, echoing in the small cafe. You think that's all this is? This isn't just about you. This is about my daughter and the life she should have had." I know," Evelyn cried, her voice cracking. And I'm so sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry." Clara's heart raced as she held the bracelet tightly, its presence a tangible connection to her daughter, and yet a horrifying reminder of the life that had slipped away. What do you want from me?" As she repeated, the question now a desperate plea, a search for meaning amidst the chaos. I want you to hear me," Evelyn said, her voice trembling but resolute. I want you to understand that I never wanted this to happen, that Sarah was so loved, even in her pain. I want to help you remember her, to help you find some peace." As Clara stared into Evelyn's tear-filled eyes, she felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crack. The truth was a jagged edge, but it was the only thing that might finally allow her to breathe again. She took a deep breath, the weight of her grief mingling with the possibility of understanding. In that moment, the two women, bound by loss and the flickers of shared sorrow, stood on the precipice of something profound, a chance to confront the past, however painful it might be. Clara stood frozen, her heart racing as the pieces of a devastating puzzle began to align in her mind. The world around her faded into a blur, the vibrant colors of the autumn leaves and the crisp blue sky overshadowed by the weight of the truth that hung heavily in the air. Evelyn's tear-streaked face, once a mere reflection of shared grief, now bore the mark of a profound connection that Clara had never anticipated. Evelyn," Clara's voice trembled as she struggled to articulate her thoughts. Are you telling me that you are Sarah's biological mother?" Evelyn's gaze dropped to the ground, her shoulders shaking slightly as if the mere acknowledgement of the truth was too much to bear. I never wanted to keep it from you, Clara. I swear. I thought it was for the best, for both of us." A bitter laugh escaped Clara's lips, cutting through the silence like a knife. For the best? You think giving away your child is for the best?" She felt a storm of emotions surge within her. Rage, confusion, and an overwhelming sadness that threatened to consume her. You've been visiting her grave. You've been grieving her. Why didn't you ever tell me?" Evelyn looked up, her eyes glistening with tears that mirrored Clara's own. I didn't know how. I thought I could find some peace by being close to her, even if she didn't know me. It was a way to feel connected, to apologize for the choice I made. I've carried that guilt for years." Clara stepped back, the weight of Evelyn's words crashing over her like a tidal wave. Guilt? Is that what you call it? You have no idea what it's like to lose a child, to feel that empty space in your heart every single day. Sarah was my everything." I know," Evelyn whispered, her voice breaking. And I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I had no idea she was suffering until it was too late." Clara's throat tightened, and she struggled to process the flood of emotions that coursed through her. You knew her name? You knew she was sick? Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you help?" Evelyn shook her head, a look of despair etched on her face. I had no right to interfere, Clara. After I gave her up, I thought it was best to stay away. But then I heard about her illness, and I felt like I was losing her all over again. It was unbearable. The air grew thick with tension, and Clara felt her heart shatter a little more with each passing second. You were there with her at the hospital. You saw her, my little girl, suffer. And you did nothing. I couldn't, Evelyn pleaded, desperation lacing her voice. I was just a nurse. I couldn't break the boundaries I had set for myself. I thought if I stayed away, I could keep my distance from the pain I caused. But I was wrong. I should have been there for her. Clara turned her back to Evelyn, her mind churning with the implications of everything she had learned. The woman who stood before her, a stranger just days ago, was now entwined in the very fabric of her daughter's tragic life. What else don't I know? As she whispered, her voice barely audible. Evelyn hesitated, fumbling with her hands as if seeking the right words. There's something else. Something I didn't want to burden you with, but now you deserve to know. Clara turned to face her again, her heart pounding. What is it? There's a journal, Evelyn said, her voice trembling. As Sarah kept a journal during her illness. She wrote about everything, the good, the bad, her thoughts about her life and her dreams. It's hidden in a place where she thought no one would find it. I've kept it safe all these years, waiting for the right moment to return it to her. Clara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. A journal? Why didn't you tell me before? Where is it? Evelyn took a deep breath, her expression shifting to one of guilt and sadness. I wanted to protect you, Clara. I didn't know how you would react. It's filled with her thoughts, her fears, and her struggles. It could change everything you think you know about her. Where is it? Clara repeated, her voice steadying with purpose. I need to see it. I need to understand her. Evelyn glanced at the ground, her hands wringing in her lap. In the attic of my old house. I was planning to go back and retrieve it soon, but I didn't want to bring any more pain into your life without knowing if you would want it. Clara's heart raced with a mixture of anger and curiosity. I don't want to keep living in the dark. I need to know the truth about my daughter. I need to know who she was, what she felt. I can't let her memory be defined by the tragedy of her death. Evelyn looked into Clara's eyes, searching for understanding. But what if the truth hurts more than the pain you already carry? What if it shatters the memories you hold dear? I'd rather face the truth than live with the uncertainty, Clara replied, a fierce determination igniting within her. I owe it to Sarah to know her story, to understand everything she went through. As Clara spoke, a sense of urgency filled the space between them. She felt a flicker of hope amidst the darkness, a chance to reclaim her daughter's narrative, to connect with who Sarah truly was beyond the pain of her loss. When can we go? She asked, her voice firm. Evelyn hesitated, the fear of reopening old wounds hanging in the air. I can take you tomorrow. But, Clara, I must warn you, what you read may change everything. Let it change everything, Clara said, her resolve unwavering. I'm ready. The two women stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared grief shifting towards a fragile understanding. They were bound by loss, yet now also by the possibility of rediscovery. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the graveyard, Clara felt an unfamiliar sense of hope begin to blossom amidst her sorrow. Thank you for being honest with me, Evelyn, Clara said softly, her voice breaking the silence. I know this isn't easy for either of us. Evelyn nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I just want you to find peace, Clara. I never wanted to complicate your life. I didn't want to hurt you further. Clara glanced back at Sarah's grave, the weight of her daughter's absence still palpable, yet now entangled with the revelation of Evelyn's presence. You're a part of her story now, whether we like it or not. We owe it to her to learn all we can. With that, the two women stood united in their shared purpose, the path ahead uncertain but illuminated by the flickering light of newfound connection. As they walked away from the grave, Clara felt the first stirrings of healing, a journey not just to confront the past, but to honor the memory of the daughter she had lost. The truth awaited, and with it, the promise of understanding.